It's one of the few times I feel like I'm too close. And we'll see how this goes. So we're headed today from Anchorage, Ted Stevens, up to Talkeetna, Alaska. This will be the first of a two-leg journey. At least a two-leg journey. I might make one extra stop, and today we are in the Cub Crafters, Cub X. So we've got this beautiful glass panel, 126 knots of cruise speed, and this should be very pretty for a Alaska's most scenic ChatGPT built flight. The second state that we're doing today, or sorry, not today, the second state that we're doing, following the Alabama most scenic flight that we completed already. So yeah, this is number 2. There was, well, I'll talk about that I guess in a minute. So there was something I noticed. Oh, that looked kind of crummy for a second there. Hopefully this game catches up on us and everything starts looking good. But yeah, I don't know what that guy's doing. He's like, whoa, another pilot flying in the sim. People doing strange things. All right, let's go to the north. We'll cross over midfield and just head in that direction. So, Alaska, one of those places I've never been. I know I've got a few friends who've flown up here professionally. And they all have said that it was gorgeous. Just kind of stunningly beautiful and excessively dangerous. And I haven't met a single person who had a different opinion than that. Beautiful and incredibly dangerous. So, all that said, like I said, I haven't got a chance to fly out of Alaska yet, or even into it. Kind of look forward to it. We've talked about taking some trips up here with our jets, and each time we've kind of discussed it, it just didn't materialize. So, in result, we're all still waiting. But and flying in a jet, especially any of the large airports, wouldn't particularly scare me. But operating out of Alaska, flying small airplanes, light airplanes, specifically piston-powered ones, can be a dangerous endeavor. And I know from numerous flights with buddies who had flown up here professionally, it was a very regular occurrence for those guys to have to either hear about buddies that they'd flown with who had passed away still flying in Alaska, or they were headed up to funerals for people who had passed away flying up here in Alaska. It's just a very, very unforgiving place to operate aircraft, and one that forces you to operate aircraft just based on the terrain and the lack of infrastructure when it comes to some of the roads. Once you start getting away from the major cities, you recognize that you're in God's country. This is remote. It's wilderness. The terrain will try to kill you. The animals will try to kill you. It's just a dangerous place to be. And making off-airport landings in places that are heavily covered in trees and forest, or mountains and steep terrain, rocks, is difficult. And then you add in the weather that this area is kind of known for, that can be very, very dynamic, changes within minutes, and can be incredibly unforgiving as well. So it's a trifecta of difficult operations, difficult places to have aircraft that require you to have aircraft, and yeah, so for us, it'll be a lot safer because we're in a sim. There's actually apparently a glacier over this direction to our right. If we were to fly down the valley over there, we would get to it. We've got current real weather, whatever the weather's actually doing up here in Alaska, which is pretty chill, with the exception of, I mean, there's, I say, somewhat strong winds, and that's kind of a, you know, it's an overstatement, especially for this area. They would consider this to be incredibly calm, but surface winds, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 20 knots at both of the airfields we were looking at. I'll probably mispronounce this. I believe we're going up to Talkeetna, which is straight north out of Anchorage. So we kind of come over this massive lake here. I think it was called Knik Arm, which comes out from the glacier up there, which is a Knik Glacier. It's off to the east. Like I said, it's something I actually, you know what, let's do this. Let's break this up now. I think we're going to do it into 3 parts. Or you'll never see this part because, for whatever reason, it doesn't get posted. But we're going to fly over there towards the Knik Glacier, and then we'll land just up here on the other side of Knik Arm. And that'll give us an opportunity to see something that it says is supposed to be pretty breathtaking on this route. It says that the terrain, obviously, the terrain is pretty impressive, and it is. But yeah, let's roll over here to the east. And we'll kind of work our way around into that little arm where the river comes out from Knik Arm here, and then from there we'll fly up, do an overflight of the glacier, which apparently I guess is a very hot area to go to anyway. Hot, that's the wrong word to use in Alaska, right? It's a very popular place for both hikes and scenic aircraft flights to fly over the glacier. So we're going to do the second one. We're going to do the flight over the glacier, and then after that we'll turn back to the north, kind of work our way back out across the lake, and then land over here at one of the airports. I think there's a town up there called Houston. Every airport, I mean, heck, we left Ted Stevens, and there were 3 airports literally within a couple miles of Anchorage. So, you know, the plan will be to take off, climb back up here to the other side. We'll land up in the town of Houston, park it, and then we'll make the next leg of the journey. So the actual, according to, once again, this is a ChatGPT biased or generated flight for the most scenic flight in the state of Alaska. So this one is going from Ted Stevens down in Anchorage up to Denali, up north of here, and Talkeetna was listed as being kind of the halfway point for us on that flight. So that's the plan. The plan was to fly to Talkeetna because that would be a nice break. But, you know, as I kind of look at the terrain going that way, yeah, it looks like it may not be overly dramatic. So that's why I was kind of like, well, let's go ahead and fly over here towards the east, take a look at the glacier, and then we'll run our way back around across the lake and towards Talkeetna. So that said, I'm going to shut up. Some of this here might get a little bit slow, so I'll probably time accelerate for you. I think I will continue to hand fly, so you'll probably see head movements. I'll just try to be a bit slower when I'm, you know, doing those at double speed for you. That way, hopefully, this doesn't take us forever long. So, enjoy the flight. this seems like a moderately good spot to say something. So one of the dangers I know that has been mentioned before about mountain flying specifically is trying to note the passes that you're flying down. And it tends to be, it's equally as dangerous for pilots who are inexperienced in the area as it is for pilots that are very well experienced, very well versed in the locations. But you start getting into situations where you have a mountain pass and valley off to the right here, like the one I'm looking at right now. We have the one that we're aiming towards up here, which is marked by the fact that the river comes out of it. So that's the one we're actually going towards. That's the one that'll take us to the glacier. There's obviously another one here to the left, just a little bit further to the north, which of course is much further away, but it's just for reference. So when pilots go flying, especially in smaller aircraft like this, and this isn't true simply in Alaska, it can be very much true in the continental United States or anywhere else around the world where you're finding mountain passes that you're having to navigate. But pilots will find themselves down the wrong mountain pass. And oftentimes, as you go flying down these mountain passes, especially in the days when you were dealing with paper charts, you were plotting your own route based off of estimations of time. And those time estimates, of course, are coming through with a weather brief that you received that gave you estimated winds aloft, which you were taking the winds aloft, calculating the distance via a ruler basically, and looking at a chart, and then dividing that through by your speed with your estimated ground speed based on the winds aloft that you got from your forecast. And it's not uncommon for forecast winds aloft to differ from actual winds aloft. And the situation that you'll run into is that you run your calculation, look at it, and you'll end up in a location that you were headed towards either before you anticipated being there or even after you anticipated being there. And the winds aloft aren't necessarily a constant along the entire route. And I've seen that specifically leaving out of the Midwest with flights all the way to the West Coast. Halfway through the flight, the winds that you're experiencing are supposed to change. And the change of those winds either can increase your ability to land with the fuel that you're required to have on board, or they can decrease it. So you could be in a situation where you think you have lots of extra fuel, but if you don't do your planning properly beforehand, you may not recognize that those winds are going to increase as you get further to the west, and next thing you know, you'll end up in a situation where you don't have additional reserves of fuel above what you originally had planned. And that can get you in trouble, of course, if you decide, I'll fly at a lower altitude because it's a smoother ride, before you recognize that, hey, you're going to be burning more gas at that lower altitude, and while you think you're ahead of the game and you think that you're going to have more fuel left over, you start getting closer to your destination before you realize, hey, I am now in a fuel critical situation and you're declaring min fuel to ATC. So anyway, that's just one of those. But the issue that people run into is you start flying down one of these valleys and it's not the valley you intended on flying down. And you find yourself in a situation where the terrain is different. Of course, we're in this Cub. It's a high horsepower Cub. I think it's 180 horse or something. Some of the fact might be a little bit more than that, actually. It might be 200 horse. So it'll climb like a little rocket ship. But it's not going to outclimb that hill. So you start getting yourself down that valley, and then you find yourself in a situation where you don't have enough room to make the turn around. To reverse your course and come back out. There is a maneuver that they've taught us, of course, in flight training, known as the chandelle, to maximize the amount of altitude gained in a given space of confined area, and do a course reversal at the same time. It was taught during the commercial pilot training, and it's how useful is it? In a real life scenario, I could argue that it may not be. I know for a fact that I have flight instructors that argued that it definitely wouldn't be. And I taught my students, like, yes, this is the maneuver, this is how you're going to perform it. If you were actually in the scenario, though, what is it that you would do if you found yourself along this valley? And it would be very different in a sim than it's going to be in real life, because there's going to be the phrase that we like to use is pucker factor, you know. That's that feeling when you're about to go over the edge of the roller coaster and your butt cheeks all clench up and you're like, I'm a little bit freaked out before you feel the drop. But that pucker factor here would involve how close can you get to the terrain off to the side, how close can you get to that hill before you start freaking out that you're going to hit that hill, how slow can you comfortably fly this airplane. Special, you got to remember, if you're in real life, you're going to have winds coming off of these hills, and there will be turbulence associated with them. There could be extreme turbulence associated with them, and there could be very massive variations in your airspeed. But after determining how close you're willing to get to a hill, and as slow as you're willing to get, with hopefully some level of stall margin, initiating a turn at minimum airspeed as you make your, or a slow flight turn back around in the opposite direction, hopefully taking up a minimal amount of space as you're going through space and ground relatively low. Is that going to be your best bet? I don't know. Is doing a chandelle going to be your best bet? I don't know. If you ever find yourself in that situation, I hope you've at least given it some thought beforehand. And obviously the best scenario there is to avoid it. Study your maps, study your charts, know where you're going, so you don't end up down a valley that is incorrect and that you're not going to be able to outclimb the gradient of the terrain. And also, like I said, right now we're flying very low. We're just kind of chilling here. That's why we're getting bounced around. But if you're flying this, of course, in a real aircraft, and you're flying towards terrain, and you're worried about the potential height of that terrain and your ability to outclimb it, climb before you reach the terrain. That way you don't find yourself in a situation where you are low altitude, low airspeed, attempting to outclimb terrain that has a steeper climb or a steeper gradient than anything your aircraft is capable of. So that's all I really have to say about that. I will say this has been pretty gorgeous thus far. Obviously we're getting the bumps from these hills here, but yeah, right up ahead there, that should be our glacier. You can see the ice forming coming off the lake, so that should be it. We'll keep kind of trucking in that direction, swing out to the southeast there, and then we'll make our turn back around. I'll probably lose a little bit of altitude so we can take a peek, at least on the way back. And once again, I've given my flight lesson for the day. Let's go ahead and shut up and keep on going. Alright, let's just say it right now. I am simply overwhelmed with the quality of the visuals. And I know that this machine could be pushed hard. Well, I say this machine. This sim could push the machine harder and provide better clarity, better graphics. But the time at which these images were captured, the lighting that we have here on the mountains, the color of that water, the blackness of that water, and just that variation as the water and the shoreline kind of disappears as it kind of goes underneath, looks stunning. And you add that in here, you know, with this white snow, the shadows in the valleys. I mean, this looks really good. What's going on up there with the train? I'm not really sure. Not worried about that. This over here, I mean, it looks like, honestly, while I'm sitting down here in my basement with the VR headset on, it's kind of hot. Everything in my brain says, you should be cold right now. It should be chilly. It's just pretty marvelous. I feel like I need a snowmobile. So we are still southeast right now. I believe the actual glacier itself is potentially this right ahead of us, and the stuff up there, the tracks that you can kind of see between the mountains there, just straight off to the east almost at this point. So I do believe that's the direction I'm going to go. The little crater that's here, obviously we've got a funky variation here in height. I wouldn't have doubt if we're dealing with some waterfall. Most of the water's flowing down there from the way the sim's attempting to show it. So we might actually have some terrain here at the edge of that glacier. Waterfall is flowing off the edge and along there too. But yeah, I believe this all up here is the actual glacier. And this is one of those things where, you know, I don't want to say I'm sad to have not seen one of these yet, seen this yet. I guess I came close to a glacier up in Banff National Park in Canada. And we were able to walk across Lake Louise and take a peek at the glacier that's up there. And I was absolutely amazed twice. Number one, by the ice that was on the water that was coming from that glacier, the amount of blue that was in it. It was just insane looking. And yeah, so this is showing us over land and not over any type of water at this point. So I'm going to say yes, we're here at the glacier. But the amount of blue that was in that ice was just something that was surreal. And then, of course, there were people out there with their ice picks, and they were climbing it, which was also kind of neat. Maybe a little bit on the crazier side, but hey, there's some adventurous folks out there, and each one of them wants to have a good time and see some amazing stuff, and I completely understand it. And I'm not climbing the glacier with you, but it was cool. It was very cool to see. And yeah, you don't get that type of clarity here in the sim. You know, there's not that level of, you know, bluish looking ice, but still, it's cool. It's a glacier. All right, we'll go ahead and start making that left turn. Work our way back around here and back to the west. Obviously the sun is making its way down. Stars are showing up. Head back west and go land at a little airport out here. I know there was one that we had just passed, which, you know, this will make you flown for 50 miles and gone nowhere because it was just on the other side of that lake. But yeah, we're going to cruise that way and eventually land here at an airport, hopefully make it before sunset. Yeah, and then we'll pick this up for a day 2 flight as we head further north. I'm gonna pull the power back a bit. Don't want to overstress it, only because I know that it was giving me trouble about that earlier. It was bouncy as it was out here, so I'm gonna take a peek if I can get my pointer to point in the correct direction. Do we have any of these that are lights? Alternator field, ignition, fuel. Over here, nav lights, those are already on. Landing lights, don't need that. Avionics master notes, not there either. Cabin heat, despite the fact of looking outside and thinking that I would need it, I don't. As I said, I was gonna fly a little lower on the way back, so we're gonna do that now. If you caught any of that noise, I do believe there's a bug on the other side of my door downstairs, and my cat would really love to play with it. So if you hear any banging in the background, that's it. Alright, so power's all the way in. Prop is sitting just underneath the red line. Okay, I said we were going to get low, didn't I? This isn't low yet. Now the real key, don't hit the ground when you don't have a lot of reference underneath you. It's bouncing around like crazy down here. Let's get over that water, huh? Kind of humorous because normally things, I was gonna say normally things smooth out just a bit over the water, but yeah. However, Microsoft Flight Sim has predicted the winds. There's no smoothness here. Winds are almost non-existent, which is kind of nice, but boy, we could use a rudder, yaw dampener or something. She's just wagging all over the place. Alright. There's nothing to see over the water anyway. We'll keep her climbing. So we're going to plan to land at the first airport we see. I would like to do it to the right, which would put us a little bit further away from Anchorage. So I'm going to aim go that direction. And, we'll just start looking for airfields when we see them. We got there. Yep, don't think that one's the one. That's all autopilot stuff. I don't actually change the screen on myself. We'll just kind of fly off to the northwest. see what looks kind of like an airport over there. I see some lights that don't quite match the others. We're going to know in just a few minutes. There we go. There's something that doesn't look right. Right there. The little V-shaped terrain right here. That's a little odd. Alright, I'm anxiously looking for beacon lights. I said, I know I flew over an airport over here to the left. Not where I intend on going. That one looks like a runway straight ahead. Like I said, I haven't seen a beacon, which is rare. Normally, the way the sim is set up, you can see these beacons from way far away. Reels, runway end identifier lights, also show up incredibly too far away. Beacons, I can get. Reels, that's not really accurate. They shouldn't be showing up nearly that far out, but no, we'll see. It looks pretty short, but it would be fairly well aligned with the wind. And yeah, I mean, it looks, even as I get closer, the orientation still reminds me of a runway, so I do believe that's an airport. Like I said, I'm just not seeing a beacon, but that looks like an airport. I guess that might have been the one that I saw earlier there. You can see that beacon clearly, but I thought it was a little further, or a little closer to us, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, the one right here, runway, blue lights for the taxiway, that's the one we're going to go ahead and land at. The one that has no light for a flashy beacon light. Just getting the snot waggling out of us. I mean, I don't think, it's not my rudder pedals. I'm not hitting them. We're just bouncing back and forth. I'm sorry if this silly thing has made anybody sick. This flight's gonna have 7 views because everyone will be throwing up somewhere as a result. I know I will. Alright, let's go ahead and pull this carb heat on while we still have some engine power in. So this looks like runway 26 here. I'm going to go ahead and make left downwind traffic for it. It appears to be the shorter of 2 runways. Oh, the one here kind of going straight north, it looks like. Ah, now a beacon shows up. Look at that. We'll see. Let's cross over midfield. Right now we're doing 127 knots, so we've got a 7-knot tailwind, give or take, from this current angle. But that could be inaccurate, obviously, and we could just be getting a partial of that. Winds are supposed to be about 030, so, you know, I think we'll just do the overfly and then land on runway. I can't read it. Is it 2 over there? Side. It's a 1624. Got downtown. Go ahead and make that turn. Just notch your flaps in. We're actually been a little bit ahead on that. See, 70 knots it looks like is showing up for the flap speed. Currently doing 79 and we're getting 88, so we got about 10 knots of wind in this direction. I'll go ahead and I'll land on that runway that was headed back behind us. Looks like, I'm gonna guess, runway 2. Big wide traffic pattern. It's probably like 3-4. My mental math brain's not adding 180 properly right now. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but don't worry, there'll be a note on the screen for you showing me just how stupid I am. Low. Pappy's up a little high, but I don't believe him right now. Yeah, see? It said high, those would have been pink. We were not particularly high. And you were right on your second guess, 3-4. Bit of right crosswind. Definitely getting bounced around a bit. Try not to ground loop it. I don't know. You know, this thing doesn't have a particularly strong crosswind component. It's like 11 knots or something. So we don't want to go too crazy on that. All right. Well, here we are. We got a low fuel annunciator. I saw that when we were turning final out there, but nothing we're going to do about that at this point. We were landing. But hopefully that was enjoyable. That was pretty cool looking from this perspective. And we'll start up going out of this airport as soon as we find out exactly where it is. That'll also be in the little comment section there. And we'll start up here on our next leg, head a little bit further north, and then we'll probably stop at, like I said, I think it's Torqueda. And we'll stop there and then refuel and continue further north from there towards Denali. So this one here should be about a 3-legger, like I said. That's my plan. No taxiing that fast. But that's going to be the plan. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Have some fun. Happy simming. Hope you guys can find your own awesome places to go to. And if you've done any flights around Alaska, please let me know. And also, like I said, check back. Make sure you can see the next flight as we drop it out here for our next leg. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon.